For probably 10 years or so I was an incel and didn't realize it, until I found r/forever alone, and got caught up in an echo chamber. I was constantly drinking, alone, at home, and wondering why no girls would talk to me or go out with me or even give me a phone number for the most part. I mean, was I not a nice guy? A proper gentleman? Being nice to all of these ladies and they weren't responding in a manner I felt they should, because I was so nice all the time. I was doing stuff for my coworkers and they weren't appreciative enough. I'd be talking to a girl and find out they had a boyfriend and be so pissed that I was doing all this nice stuff for them, and there was no way that they'd return the favor by giving me a mouth hug or sexy times. Not fair, right? Then, one day, after posting on a throwaway account, I was complaining about how this one coworker who was leaving was such a bee because she wouldn't respond to my advances at all and kept trying to friend zone me, and I'd always be a loser and no one would ever want a guy like me because I guess I'm just too nice for my own good, right? And some dude responded with something along the lines of, if you're only doing nice things because you think someone is going to reciprocate with sex, you may not actually be a nice person. Just a nice guy. And nice guys suck. I think they even linked, or I found soon afterwards, a website about nice guys and why what you're doing is kind of a dick move, and maybe if you were just doing nice things for people because you were nice and not because you're putting nice coins into a vending lady to maybe show her how special you are, you could find someone not repulsed by your overbearing, creepy antics. So I worked on ways to be more confident in myself, improved my grooming. Fat, lazy slob over here guys wondering why 8s and 10s wouldn't date smelly, sweaty me. Got my hair cut. I hadn't been to a barber shop in probably about 6 years at that point. And stopped treating women as some prize I had to win, and more like people like me except they have boobs. And I got a girlfriend after 1 month of that I still have to this day. Actual incel here. I had lots of chauvinistic views towards women. Them being more emotional and not doing anything productive. It is men that do all the work, while women just need to be pretty and so on and so on. I was failing lots of classes in college and that kind of woke me up that maybe I might need help. Not the fact that I would spend literally days without talking to someone in college. So I went through a crazy self-improvement phase. Studied self-help books like it was my job. Meditation, joined every club I could think of. Found out women are into some really cool stuff. Became friends with some of them. I would consider myself to be still an incel, without the ideology. I mean that is the point of it, there is no hope. But still, I could improve myself in the way that I am aware now that I am an insecure butthole and I respect women as human beings. So happy end, I guess. I am 35 and didn't lose my virginity until 31. Didn't really start dating until 30. But I didn't identify as an incel, wasn't aware that was a label. I knew angry and bitter women haters was a thing. Elliot Rodger was what would come to mind when I learned about it as an actual ethos. He shot up a sorority house because nobody would have sex with him. But during all my years of not dating I did feel entitled to happiness I just wasn't getting. Timing, circumstances, excuses. I always had a reason. Unhealthy hang-ups on women that were just unavailable stymied any moving on I could do. For me it was periods of isolation that did the damage. I spent a lot of time alone in college, and I did not even have internet at my home or a computer. It was college, I used campus resources. And it was still during the time dating online was considered super weird, so if my mind went there the societal stigma mixed with the swan song of Catholic guilt meant, I didn't do anything, made no effort. So that was more or less my situation when I graduated college and moved back in with family. I at least got more readily accessible internet. But still rarely went out, even though I had a circle of friends. People change, I get drunk and make a fool of myself and assume they don't want me around anymore, etc. Video games and TV shows were big distractions. There were rare instances of meeting women online through non-dating sites. But they would be 1,000 miles away and I still thought myself wrong for pursuing relationships that way. Around 30 I just started making actual effort. There's a whole thing with when I got an iPod Touch that turned things around for me. I actually wrote it out for another comment but I'm on mobile and will link or paste if you're interested. Exercising and losing weight made me feel more confident. I was never super overweight compared to others, well below a 100-pound excess. I got dating apps and just started chatting. I'm fairly clever and I can write, so I at least turned that into many first dates. Got a few months out of it sometimes, which was when I lost my virginity. I didn't tell her, and honestly after I didn't think of it as a huge deal anymore. I just looked at the years of missed or ignored opportunities to do anything and was just annoyed at past self. Pretty sure that night I stared at myself in the mirror, screaming it's about time. Less than a year later I met another girl who I've been with ever since. That was over 3 years ago. I said before I felt entitled to happiness. Sometimes over the years I would pursue taken girls or at least pine over them. I judged them for dating obvious buttholes. But when that inevitably ended, I of course never tried to get in there myself. I don't think I ever really hated them for it. Well, maybe I was never an incel after all, just a dad and lonely guy holding on to hope. I wasn't part of any incel groups, but was probably what people refer to as a nice guy. I'm shy and awkward and used to fall hard for anyone who was nice to me. One girl really took advantage of this, saying she wanted to date eventually, just not right now. I did so much for her, thinking it would lead to a relationship. I bought her things, fixed her car, lent her money that I knew she'd never repay. I was absolutely heartbroken when she started dating someone else. But we remained friends and I got to hear all the reasons her new guy was awful. So I held out, thinking they'd break up and I'd have a chance. That never happened and I ended up feeling used. I didn't take any responsibility for myself and blamed her entirely. After that, I jumped into a relationship with another girl who cheated, manipulated, and abused me. I saw this as a pattern and tried to find some reason for why it had happened to me when the people around me all seemed to do well with dating. Again, I blamed external factors. It must have been that I was ugly? Maybe I wasn't rich enough? Those must be the only things women care about. All women are really just out to find a man to leech off of until they stop being useful. I started down a path of seeing women as some sort of trophy for success. Being nice didn't matter, it would actually show weakness and hurt your chances. But what changed all that was when I joined Tinder, as strange as it sounds. I joined with the intention of just trying to hook up for the first time. But almost everyone I talked to was so nice and seemed genuinely interested in me, even if I wasn't the best looking or the wealthiest guy in the world. The first Tinder date I went on, she was really sweet and we spent a lot of time just talking. I didn't feel used or pitied. She ended up ghosting me, but that was okay, because my confidence was restored. It turns out my real problem was that I didn't know how to talk to women until then. My dating life completely turned around after that and I recognized that my bitterness toward women was totally unwarranted. I was raised in what can only be called a matriarchal family, the older brother to twin girls. My father and I always just kept our heads down and went with the flow because it was easier to do what my mother and sisters wanted, than to stick up for ourselves. This eventually turned into feelings of inadequacy, a lack of self-confidence, and putting others before myself so much so that it would end up hurting me, essentially, setting myself aflame to keep others warm. The incel and red pill movement was this mind-blowing idea to me. It spoke to the experience I had growing up, and I fell for it. It felt like being part of a resistance against the way I was raised. And that group ultimately led to me seeking counseling for depression when that hadn't turned me around, and fixed all my problems with my upbringing. I think a lot of incels have been, or feel they have been, hurt in some deep, intimate way by a woman and just need to understand that healing comes from within, not from extracting vengeance. Ironically enough, it's my wife that's helped me overcome my upbringing more than anything else. In my freshman year of high school I was a pretty socially active guy. Except even though I could usually talk to people no problem, I was super insecure and had no self-respect or confidence. I got a crush on a girl on one of my classes and I think things are going well, until I hear from her friend that she, my crush, thought I was creepy and I should stop texting her. Needless to say I was pretty heartbroken and angry. I started blaming her for my feelings of love and hate, and would say anything to hurt her, even if they were sexist/racist jokes. I had a friend who could be seen as an incel and he basically taught me the ideology and I bought it. Over the summer after I realized that I'm kind of a butthole and I needed to stop. It took a lot of self-realization to realize I was a bully and I needed to stop taking my home life out on others. I hope I'm better now though, but that's just my 2 cents. I don't know if I was ever properly one. The term didn't exist when I was at my most forlorn state of love, but even still I never went off the deep end into any one stereotype territory. Maybe I did, can't judge myself too accurately there. In a lot of ways I was a proto-neckbeard. Back in high school and the start of college, about 14 years back, I took it upon myself to be the hat guy. Still have a collection, I might dust it off sometime. I didn't do it to be cool per se, and I like to think I just genuinely liked all my hats, but I can't pretend I didn't make it a point to wear one when I was going out to meet people for the first time. Around 2009 the buzzword for the lonely loser was friendzone. I can't say I ever really bought into it because, well, I never was close enough to any one woman to be friend-zoned. I was never a nice guy but definitely had some friends that were. One thing that helped me more than anything else was having some nice guy or neckbeard friends. Despite all my depression and loneliness, I was never hateful. The hatefulness really made me cut ties with some bad mindsets. I stopped wearing hats because I didn't want to be associated with them, and a reputation or stereotype was starting to take root, and it was something I didn't want to be. I started to float. Like most outsiders at that age, I tried many different hats, metaphorical this time. I spent time with hippies and hipsters, burnouts and dropouts, party girls and nerds. I never felt like I had any one identity to myself though, and whenever I'd, laughably, try to flirt with some of these people, I think there was a clear wall that I was putting up. It was always my awkwardness from my own hang-ups and my keeping an emotional distance. It was always my fault, so I guess I was just a sad vocel, but isn't that the case for most incels? I never really committed to any one identity because it never really felt right, and I was always more than a little contemptuous of the people that went full stereotype. I hated my hipster friend with the waxed mustache, the stoner friend with the 420 everything, and one trench coat wearing neckbeard almost single-handedly made me hate my favorite show with his awkward fixation. I had a group of people I'd crash parties with, and when they found out I was a virgin they tried to help me out. Ha! They shipped me with a female friend of mine who I simply wasn't interested in. Not a case of standards or being a choosing beggar, I just wasn't attracted to her, hard as they tried to awkwardly get us to bang. For as wanting I was in companionship, I really wasn't interested in women. I started to think of myself as asexual, and in a lot of ways, despite being in a sexual relationship I still think of myself this way. Part of it was sour grapes, why won't women be in a relationship with me, but another part of it was the realization that I had options for sex that I didn't want. I wasn't afraid or anything. Maybe a little, but I realized my genital was never a motivator and, in some ways, was an inhibitor. I was so insecure about the sexual aspect to relationships, my virginity and my lack of experience that I cut myself out before I could be cut out. If I did go on a date it was with awkward nerdy girls who were just as much, if not more so, on the spectrum than I was, and they always ended in disaster. Through it all, though, I never got too mean-spirited. One thing that helped was my friends being in relationships. Whenever my friends dated somebody, my outlook was always, oh, cool, you're my friend now too. I never coveted what they had and kind of put up a mental block to simply not think of them as potential companions. Okay, there was one I might have had a crush on, but I wasn't about to undermine my buddy pursuing anything, and I genuinely valued the friendship I made with her, so I don't know. I've been rambling for a while now. This led to me hanging out with women just to hang out and genuinely enjoying myself. To anybody that thinks they're an incel, I have to recommend just being friends with a group of women, learning what women do and don't like, and learning to just enjoy the company of friendship. I'm not talking friend zones, just hang out with a friend's girlfriend sometime, without your friend, and have a good time. I'm probably the last person to ask about casual hookups, but I genuinely value my platonic friendships with the women in my life. At the very least it helps undo the invisible power dynamic women can have over you when they have something you want, but can't get, by teaching you to enjoy the companionship you have. Then again, as I said, I wasn't really motivated by my boner but by loneliness. Ultimately, I was in my mid-20s one night, drinking with a friend who was going through a bit of a slut phase, no shame, and after an awkward silence I asked if they wanted to have sex. She said yes. For a first time it wasn't even bad, I would actually get worse upon finding a long-term partner. After that night the mystique was gone. I had done the deed if it were and was the same person the next day. I'm still friends with the woman I lost my virginity to, and eventually I developed a crush on somebody who liked me back. The details of winning her over could take as much time as this has. I'm in a stable relationship now and happy. I got a good job, a good cat, and I'm doing okay. I was there. Deep. Believing everything. I did not know the name incel at the time. This was 15 to 10 years ago. Browsing some random forum I read some guy posting more or less the same beliefs they hold. I considered myself ugly, fat, unfit. My hobbies were and are video games, board and card games, and everything considered nerdy back then. I could speak to women, no problem with that, because I'm really social most of the time. However, I hated them because they didn't like me. I was only the friend, the brother. Therefore, I spiraled into the hate movement as my main belief. I treated them like human beings, but deep inside me, I hated them. Every time I went to clubs, parties or anything similar, no girl gave me attention. None. Zero. Years and years of rejections almost destroyed me. And then, one day, after getting rejected again, at 22, I had enough. Enough of all the girls around me, enough of being a virgin at 22. I went to end it all. So, I went to a brothel, chose one girl, had sex, paid and left. It didn't feel good, it didn't feel nice, I could not finish. I must have done something wrong. A couple of months later, I started calling escorts. That was different, and I liked it so much. I spent 3 or 4 years with escorts. I thought that since I've spent so much time with girls physically at hot level, my need for the approach or approval of girls was diminished to a minimum. And that really helped me. I started abandoning all my hateful speeches to my friends, all my cringy incel beliefs and posts faded into obscurity. I stopped going with escorts some time now. With that behind me, I was new, better. I started getting more fit, gaining more confidence. Even managed to get some dates and some hookups. I became a better person once everything ended. I was no incel anymore. Now, I may not be 100% happy with that time, but I recognize the help it gave me. I don't think I was an incel per se, but I'll tell my story. I went to a military school. It was a boarding school, but we had a good number of students who lived in the area who came to school during the day and went home afterwards. All the girls that attended fell into this category, obviously. Now the number of guys there far outnumbered the girls. My senior year there was 30 girls and something like 250 to 300 guys. So, yeah, the girls had their pick of the litter, so to speak. And tall, skinny, goofy looking, shy, socially awkward me, who never had much luck with the ladies out in the real world, didn't stand a chance. The phrase slim to none didn't apply at all. My chances were straight up none at that place. So of course the girls gravitated towards the guys who were good looking, or athletic, or had the gift of good gab, and never said 2 words to me. And of course I resented that. In my mind they were all a bunch of stuck-up whores. But then one day the old inner voice said, dude, you're in butthole, you know that? Can you honestly say that if the situation was reversed you wouldn't be doing the exact same thing? And I thought, yeah, if that were the case I'd definitely be making time with all the hotties. So after that I just let it go. Still didn't help me out with the girls there, but I felt much better about myself after that. I was the nice guy that got friend-zoned by any girl I tried to talk to in high school. I was always the one to confess my feelings for a girl just because she had been nice to me for a couple weeks. Then, when she just wanted to be friends, I would get upset with myself and her. Seeing these same girls that friend-zoned me hooking up with the douchebags pissed me off to no end. I was the type that would do absolutely anything a girl asked me to do at any time. One girl asked me to buy her cigarettes at 1 a.m. while I was in bed asleep, so what did I do? Drove straight to the gas station and then 15 minutes to her house and was met with a half-hearted hug and a thanks. I couldn't understand why these girls didn't want to sleep with me. Eventually I realized I was the one putting myself through all this emotional trauma. I decided I was going to work on myself, and not care what girls thought. I realized my hair was always messy and uncut, my clothes were old and fit poorly, and I had been wearing the same beat-up shoes for several years. Not only that, but I was scrawny as hell, so I hit the gym. Went from 150 pounds to 195 over several of years, I am 6.2 for reference. And at the same time I started caring about my physical appearance. I started getting a fresh haircut every 2 weeks, bought clothes that fit well and showed off my gym gains, and my confidence went way up. Having the confidence to not care whether a girl liked me back or not was the real game changer. I'm now at the point where I don't really hit on girls too much, the ones I talk to usually come to me first. I look back on all my old mistakes and one piece of advice I can give is, don't give a crap about anyone else but yourself. If you invest all of your self-worth into what a girl thinks about you, you're gonna have a bad time. Oh god, this was definitely me in high school. I was the creep weirdo who, by the time I graduated, had asked every single girl out. I literally had no idea what I was doing wrong. I was practicing all the classic southern gentleman things that I was supposed to, yet having no luck, think milady, but only slightly less cringy. It wasn't until I got to college and went on a period of self-discovery that I knew the error of my ways. The first, and most important, concept that I learned was that women aren't sex dispensaries that you deposit nice coins into and get puss in return. They have to choose you. I still kept doing nice things for girls because that's the way I was raised, but I removed my expectations for getting anything in return. The second concept was making myself attractive, and it was a lot easier than I thought it would be. A nice basic buzz cut suddenly turned my oily mop of hair into a clean, presentable style. Went clean shaven on facial hair too, because all I could grow was a piddly pubic hair look and butt beard. Got a benzoyl peroxide solution to start working on the acne. Marching band was my form of exercise to stay fit and avoid the freshman 15. Boom, done. Had an amazing girlfriend for 3 years before we broke up to go our separate ways, mutually. It's amazing what a different perspective in life can give you. I have shared this story on Reddit many times. I never considered myself an incel, but considered myself a nice guy instead. I was a virgin until I was 23 years old, and have had many failed attempts at getting a girlfriend. Many times, the girl was even interested in me, but my confidence was too low to pursue them, and they eventually became disinterested and dated somebody else instead. After hearing "you're like a brother to me" too many times, I just started cutting those girls out of my life. Still, every time I met a new girl, I kept trying to be best friends first, then trying to date them. Over and over. Like an insane person. Either way, in comes my current girlfriend. Met her at work, fell for her the moment I saw her. Things were hitting off and were going great between us. As usual, we became good friends, and then, I found out that she had a boyfriend. At that point, I was going to cut her out, but I made one of the most significant choices in my life instead. I realized that she was an amazing person, and that I wanted her in my life even if I would never get the chance to date her. Even if I had to spend the rest of my life alone, and I believed I would at the time. Well, it turns out that her current boyfriend was a burnout and she wanted out of the relationship. I stuck to my guns and didn't pursue her, just helped her move out, and made sure that she settled into her new place comfortably, since her family was on the other side of the country. Instead, she aggressively pursued me, and ignored my romantic incompetence. She was my first kiss, I burped in her mouth by accident and was instantly busted, took my V card, and in 2 weeks we will be celebrating our 4-year anniversary. I had a more defeatist mentality than incels do now, but it was back in 2007 to 2011, before incels were a thing. I blamed myself, but couldn't see a way out of it, and basically just gave up on dating in college. I got close, but didn't read the signs that the girl who was interested in me was putting out until a disgustingly long time after she had already moved on. What took me out was the realization that I was wallowing in my own misery, and that I needed to treat dating like the learning process of anything else. I needed to practice, get rejected, and refine my technique until I found someone who accepted me for who I was, and who I could accept for being who she was. It took a long time on OkCupid, plenty of fish and Tinder before I even got a first date, and then a long time before I lost my virginity to a date. From there, it got easier, but then I had to learn that I didn't need to be in a relationship to have sex, but it definitely made things easier. Then I had to learn that getting into relationships just to have sex wasn't going to keep me happy, since I dated some people who I didn't particularly care for just for the sake of sex. After that, I had to learn when to tell them how I felt. For some, I waited too long, like the girl whose signs I missed, and for others, I moved too fast. I found a middle ground after a while, and then tried to learn how to find someone whose long-term goals lined up with mine. By then, I was completely confident in my dating abilities, and I was very firmly out of what's now known as the incel mindset. After a few more years of dating and friends with benefits, I met my now fiancé while looking for hookups on Tinder, and we're getting married next summer. I don't think incels are bad people. I just think they need a mentor who can show them that they too can get out of the hole they've dug for themselves. After a certain age, people get too smart, and instead of exploring the social scene as a dumb teenager, they box themselves out by reasoning themselves out of social situations, and sometimes, that means they're blaming other people for the way they are. They can be helped, but not by the communities of people like them who congregate on the internet. They need to get out in person and meet people who aren't like them. I don't know if I qualify as an incel since all of my woman problems happened before social media, but maybe my history mirrors any current former incels. I remember my first crush in maybe 2nd grade. I told my mom I liked a girl in school and asked her how I could get the girl to like me. Big mistake, she told me to be nice to her. This pattern repeated. Every female friend or woman in my life, when I would ask them how to get girls to like me, they would reinforce that I should be some variation of nice to them, be a gentleman, be her friend first, etc. Of course, behaving in this way got me a lot of female friends and the number of voices reaffirming this advice kept increasing. Movies, romantic comedies, and other media also reinforced this. The self-effacing, self-sacrificing nice guy got the girl in the end due to no other value than his virtuous behavior. So it should come as no surprise that when this didn't work in real life I got frustrated and angry. But, crucially, because I was supposed to be nice, I kept all of this frustration to myself. I imagine if incel sites existed back then I would have vented my frustration there and gotten sucked into the negative feedback loop. What got me out of that mindset was when I started becoming friends with guys who were better at getting women than I was. I remember in my early 20s a guy saying that asking women for dating advice is like a rock musician asking a music critic how to write better music. So I started copying the behaviors of these guys, mirroring their attitude, working out with them, dressing like them, drinking like them, dancing like them, all that. More or less just became a frat bro who was enjoying life.